reproductive rights are under assault in the United States. And what's worse, the rationale put forth by the Supreme Court to justify rolling back nearly 50 years of precedent that there's no implicit right to privacy in the Constitution lays the groundwork for a full court press on a host of other settled cases. Deep Listens is taking action, and we need your help. Of course, we want you to learn about the elected officials in your area and vote in every single election, but we'd like you to consider contributing to the national network of abortion funds as well. The NNAB is a clearinghouse of regional abortion and reproductive health organizations across the United States. Their goal is to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, centering on those looking for assistance and organizing at the intersection of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. You can contribute to the NNAB directly at abortionfunds.org/donate. You can also use their site to locate an abortion fund in your area so you can keep your money local and aid your neighbors. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we explore role-playing video games in depth. That is where the name came from. My name is Jeff Rude, the host and the De Quervins Tenosynovitis of this operation. Joining me, we have the lunotriquetral ligament injury, Braden, arbitrary water redacted. Hello, Braden.
Sad and tired and slightly wired. But I'm here to talk about video games.
Whoop, whoop. Also joining us, the deep vein thrombosis of the group, we have Chris, Zombie Pie Redacted. Hello, Chris.
Speaking of bodily injuries today, my crotch has been put through the ringer today. Not only did I, prior to starting the stream, pour hot tea all over my crotch, I also, and this is something that every member of this podcast can relate to, I apparently slept in a weird position and crossed my legs while sleeping, and now my testicles have been hurting all day long. Don't tell me you two don't understand what I mean when I say that.
You know, I gave you the injury that's common for folks, let's say young men who wind up having one forearm be surprisingly bigger than the other one for some reason. And I thought that was funny, so you're welcome. Because we like to keep it relatively PG-13 here. You know, that's like a John Cena joke.
One time I got yelled at for breaking that rule.
I imagine you have, Chris. I imagine you have. And hey, speaking of video games that cause various maladies of the lower arm and wrist, on this episode we're going to be discussing Nox. Because this game will give you fucking RSI. That's the joke.
Okay.
Do we have any other jokes? Do we have any Diablo puns? Do you have anything like that?
Stay a while and listen to Off the Deep End.
Deckard Cain. There, it's all. Okay.
The sanctity of this place has been fouled on Off the Deep End.
I know two former Blizzard staff who stopped working there about a decade ago. They live in my area now. Two things spurred from that. One, they're lovely people, and they have children, and they're both really wonderful. Two, both of them seem very happy to not be at Blizzard anymore. And at the time when I learned this information, I was just like, yeah, it's probably really exhausting to work on, you know, Diablo 3 and World of Warcraft and stuff. Turns out they were perhaps being a little too euphemistic about why they were exhausted about being there, in light of news that's come out in the last couple of years. 3, I bought off of them with the intention of auctioning it off for charity, a copy of the Diablo 3, like, Omega, Ultra, super fancy schmancy PC edition
completely intact with everything in it, and it's signed by basically the entire development staff of Diablo 3. It's really cool. Like honestly, like a really, really unique item that I've had like good intentions of trying to sell basically and give the proceeds 100% to a charity for years now. And no one's interested in it. Like, no one. And I think it's just because it's Diablo 3. That game has a unique amount of poison on it, both from just like the real money auction house mess and the relatively muted reception of it at large. And then particularly in the last couple of years, as, you know, news about Blizzard has come out, and, you know, the working conditions under which that game was probably
Don't you mean
forged.
future subsidiary of Microsoft Blizzard?
Yeah. Activision subsidiary Blizzard.
Activision, right? Microsoft subsidiary Blizzard. I don't know. I felt like the weird thing about Diablo 3 is that game ended up making a shit ton more money than anyone predicted on console ports rather than the original PC release. Yeah. Which is kind of where action role-playing games have slowly but surely crawled towards. I think that, you know, the top-down isometric CRPGs are kind of the exception, but that Diablo-like, I think Braden can kind of back me up, it's increasingly become podcast games or like go-to podcast comfort food or console games that have benefited greatly from Game Pass, let's just say.
Diablo 3 is just a fucking Skinner box. It is 2 steps away from literally just being a clicker. And I respect that.
It's a very smooth brain game. Most of my time I've spent with Diablo 3 has been on one of the console versions of it, and that is a pretty great way to play Diablo 3. The thing that always impressed me, I don't know if this is still true, but at the time it was, when I was playing Diablo 3 a bit, is they never ported the controller stuff to the PC version of that game. Just from a get more eyeballs on it thing. And it was probably because they didn't have to. It was selling fine on consoles, and the PC people were happy, and they would have raised Cain about having their game turned into like a baby game for console people or whatever. But I don't know, man. It's a really good adaptation of those controls onto a controller.
Yes, it's fantastic.
It's the only version of Diablo my spouse is ever going to play. I'll tell you that right now.
But, you know, we'll talk about it later. This game existing before the release of Diablo 2, boy howdy. Boy howdy. Because, man, if we want to talk about, like, all-time most important games in the history of, like, PC gaming, it's like Diablo 2, it's like Wolfenstein, Doom, goddamn, I would even say like the Command and Conquer games, StarCraft, but like Diablo 2 is definitely like one of the most important PC games to ever be made, ever.
Yes. I've said this before. Diablo 1 is one of the most important games of all time. Diablo 2 is more important. And I think that's because the first Diablo is very much riffing off of classical capital R roguelikes, and was originally going to be turn-based before they made it real time. And I feel like Diablo 2 is where they took that formula, they said, hey buddy, you like skill trees and min-maxery and farming Uber Diablo for Stones of Jordan, and basically turned it into what the genre has been. And, you know, World of Warcraft took cues from that, and everything else took cues from World of Warcraft. Video games are, in a lot of ways, directly informed by Diablo 2.
I love the story of, like the moment Diablo 1 clicked. It's in one of those expose kind of articles that people have done over the years. And it was, and I forget the creator, but, you know, they're sitting testing and fiddling around with this turn-based thing. I was just like, what if this was, you know, what if we turned the knob from turn-based to real time in this room, in this encounter, and just fiddled around with it, not expecting a whole heck of a lot, and it was immediate, like, lizard brain, like, oh, yes, yeah,
yes,
yes, sicko's shirt, man, like, immediate.
Sickos
response to it. Because it feels good. That's all. Most of my, I swear to God, we're going to talk about Nox really soon. All of my LAN gaming, actually, like strictly speaking, games that were played over a LAN in my life have been Diablo 2. And I was all in undergrad. I was not much of a PC gamer outside of the Total War series when I was a lad. But in college, with one of the 2 or 3 laptops I went through or borrowed from people, was Diablo 2. And you know, that at that point that game was almost a decade old, basically. Still got some play. Still is getting some play. It's still getting patches.
Huh.
That game's still being updated. That's crazy.
It did that
but it
HD
is.
version.
It just got an HD version, which people seem
Okay about.
kind of
They'd like it more
yeah.
than the Warcraft 3 HD.
Yeah.
faint praise, but yes.
It's kind of weird to think, but this genre is going through a bit of a comeback. It's not like a full-on reboot or like, you know, it's not back to where we were maybe like Diablo 2, even like post Diablo 3.
Yeah.
But Path of Exile is like, you check the online community for Path of Exile, they are on par with some of the biggest MMORPGs.
Oh, absolutely.
Day and day.
I understand they're all angry about the new update.
Oh God, I don't want to even talk about it.
Yeah,
but anyways,
no, it's so that's how you know it's a real video game.
That's how you know it's a real video game.
And
we were just talking about it between the two of us, but like THQ Nordic has published 2 expansion packs for Titan Quest recently.
2006's Titan Quest.
And so, yeah, this genre is I'm not going to say it's fully where we were in the early 2000s to like the 2010s, but it's starting to kind of make a comeback. Okay. And it's cool.
Here's my other thing, though. Every game is a loot game now.
I think that's the thing. Yeah, this genre has a reputation of having Skinner box stuff in it to where it makes it very easy to turn one of these games into a loot box grind.
Yeah. Or, you know, you're one of those weirdos who's like, I'm going to spend 50 hours, brain turn off, grinding my way through the seasonal ladder. To those people, I say, I salute you. Your wrists are stronger than mine.
Yeah.
My arm just hurts thinking about it.
So Nox.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, like, I think that's like
thing.
a meaningful jump-off point for Nox, I guess. I'm going to introduce this game, and then we're going to get into it, because there's rules that I've decided that we have to follow. Otherwise, the gods will be very mad with us, and they won't show up for my Winterfall festivals. So, as you already know, in the audience there, Nox was developed by Westwood Studios, and it was published by, believe it or not, actually I think it was published by Electronic Arts.
Electronic Arts?
I have it written down as Westwood Studios was the publisher. I'm actually going to check this right now.
They were bought by EA in 98?
98 is when Westwood and Burst Studios was acquired for Electronic Arts for like $122 million. And they used to be
big bucket of money. Here's the publishing split. There was in North America, Westwood was the sole publisher of it. In Europe, it was published by EA.
Hold it.
So at this point, they were, as you mentioned, owned by EA, but they still handled, I guess, a certain amount of their own publishing. So that's why I wrote that as I did. The sole platform was the personal computer for Microsoft Windows. It was released on February 16th, 2000 in North America, and probably... yeah, it says February 25th in Europe, so not very long thereafter. Subsequently released on various digital storefronts over the years. That is the bit, I guess, to finish up the intro fun stuff. Hey, if you're enjoying this discussion of role-playing game stuff, Diablo, video games, various tendon-based injuries, and other sundry events, you can kick it with us in a Discord. However, there's an entry fee. And you get that entry fee paid to us by going to patreon.com/deeplistens. That's patreon.com/deeplistens. listens. But here's the thing, you pay that entry fee, you get access to that Discord, as mentioned, and we're all cool. There's actually tons of really intelligent people from around the world in there that make for, I think, really lovely conversation and various perspectives and viewpoints on all sorts of goings-on in this
Magic the
wild
Gathering,
world.
Final Fantasy, basketball,
Brazilian politics, the works. We got the spread.
Anime.
We got
Animal
news
pics.
coming out of Victoria, Australia.
rappers
It's hot stuff.
showing their love for Umineko.
Everything you could possibly want. But it gets better. Not only will any dollar amount get you in that Discord, but it will also allow you to put a game onto our slush pile, whereupon we will draw from said slush pile at the end of every one of these episodes with the sole intent of looking at the RPGs you want us to look at. And there is literally no limit on the platforms or time periods. We're relatively flexible on what can constitute an RPG.
Please
I suppose
pick CRPGs. Please pick more CRPGs. Please pick more CRPGs.
we would sure like that. But, hey, do what you gotta.
Do what you gotta.
Do what you gotta. You can also send us questions to an email address. We have one of those. It's inquiries@deep.lol. Inquiries@deep.lol. If you send them to questions@deep.lol, it goes to the so-called other show run by those other guys, and you don't want that. So, here we are. I feel like I bulldozed a little bit, but I guess the neatest segue I could make off of the rough topic I recall was, whereas there's a bunch of loot box and kind of random proc gen stuff that I think constitutes part of the beating heart of the Diablo lineage and version of this experience, Nox is I think a lot more authored. I think is like one of the main skews there.
It came out in early 2000, so it came out between Diablo 1 and 2. And I feel like this is the critical point where all of the weird also rans came out. Because after Diablo 2, everyone just did Diablo 2. You ever played Sacred? It's just Diablo 2, but worse and very European.
Ever played Dungeon Siege 3?
Fucking Dungeon Siege, a technical marvel that is also the video game equivalent of eating styrofoam.
I'm trying to think of like my personal favorite Diablo clones. I mean, I think I have a soft spot for Throne of Darkness, Titan Quest. All right, I know Braden's gonna flip out. I think I have a soft spot for Sacred.
Okay. That game was so boring.
It's one of those great PlayStation 3 games that runs so good.
I like Diablo 2.
I liked Destiny when I played it.
Yeah.
That's being a little glib, or perhaps stretching the definition here.
Braden knows this, but I'm a Path of Microsoft Exile. I mean, Path of Exile pervert.
Sincerely, I think Grim Dawn is cool.
Yeah. But anyways, so this was informed by Diablo 1 more than Diablo 2 because Diablo 2 did not exist. And so you have a lot of weird kind of side steps and experimentation here that if this game had come out after Diablo 2, some parts of this game would just straight up not exist.
It's weird because I guess it's worth maybe digging a little bit into the creators of this game a little bit before we get into their inspirations, alleged or otherwise. Because Westwood's kind of interesting.
Yes.
And maybe the first great example, the second, actually, because you've got to talk about Origin, I guess, in that same breath, of EA buying a company and kind of putting it into the meat grinder and turning it into EA sausage.
Yeah, just
out the other end.
Running it into the ground, ruining one of the most multi-talented developers of the 90s. They made a fucking Eye of the Beholder.
Well, that was their first big game,
They
from
made
what I hear, is that...
Dune 2, the game that created the RTS genre.
Yeah, so their first big success was Eye of the Beholder in 1991. Prior to that, they had kind of been a smaller independent studio. They had worked strategically with Epic's EPYX and then SSI, porting games to like 8 and 16-bit systems like the Commodore 64 and Atari ST, and eventually Amiga.
Did you know?
Yes.
Did you know?
What?
That they are responsible for the unlicensed Tengen produced port of Namco's Pac-Mania for the NES, only released in North America on a black cartridge. Did you know that?
You have a wonderful encyclopedia of Namco-based knowledge, Jeff. I'm continually
famous
amazed by that.
RPG studio.
And yes, Jeff just champing at the bit like Pac-Man.
They call me the Derailer.
Their early pre-Eye of the Beholder reputation is that they were a small-scale production that would work in alliance with SSI, and they would just port titles from other bigger projects for that SSI did. I think their first real significant project was a BattleTech game. It was like a BattleTech game that was, I think it was before Dune 2. Well, obviously before.
Are
Dune
you
2.
referring to BattleTech, the Crescent Hawk's Inception?
Maybe, probably. But that was like a DOS game. And a lot of these games, it's really hard to go back to them, in part because of the licensing and rights issues associated with them. But the company's first big success story was Eye of the Beholder. And I would say Eye of the Beholder is a cool thing, man.
Man, what if we covered Lands of Lore 1, their follow-up to Eye of the Beholder 2?
The Sega CD version, I don't know if Jeff has ever played it. Doesn't that have a Yuzo Koshiro
yes, as a Yuzo
soundtrack?
Koshiro soundtrack that is completely...
It's completely different from the PC version.
It's completely discordant with what the game is, but as far as Sega CD house jams, it's quite good.
Yeah, it's like he did a soundtrack for a random X68000 fantasy game, but just was like, they were just like, I don't know, can you make some cool music? And he was like, yeah, okay,
yeah, I'm
sure.
Yuzo motherfucking Koshiro.
But anyways, after Eye of the Beholder, it really came down to them getting bought by Virgin Games, because we forget that Virgin Interactive used to be a huge factor in, especially the PC side of things. There was like a 5 to 6 year crease where Virgin Interactive was spending shit tons of money on PC video game development. And so that's where you get the Legend of Corandia point and click games, as well as eventually Dune 2, the building of a dynasty. But that was kind of the weird thing, is that Westwood put their hand in all of the different cookie jars. They did not just, even though they have the reputation of being a real-time strategy developer, especially with the popularity of Command and Conquer, they did Dune, they did Legend of Corandia, they got their start doing CRPGs, they did Lands of Lore, and then eventually they did Nox. So it was not unheard of for them to dabble in a action role-playing game at the time. That was not the surprising part. And the interesting thing about Westwood Studios is, prior to them getting bought by EA, is they were a huge fixture of the PC community. It was estimated, I think I read on Rock Paper Shotgun, they had 5 to 7% of the PC game market. Just one studio had a huge slice of that.
One in every $20 that people are spending on PC games at a certain point was just going to Westwood, which is a lot when you consider how many people make PC games. That's really buck wild. I'm sorry, I'm tripping over the fact that they made Dungeons and Dragons Order of the Griffin for the TurboGrafx.
Yes.
Which I was like, oh, that's got to be a CD game. No, it's a HuCard game that came out in mid-92 and is North American exclusive, which is a recipe for a game costing, $200 to $250 for a complete set with a case and everything. I'm also not convinced it's very good, which is not just poo-poo on Westwood. It's just, if you're making stuff for the TurboGrafx in 1992 that's North American exclusive, you probably got your B team on it. But yeah, they made a shed load of money making very well-received PC games. They dabbled in genres, and they kind of only did bangers.
Yeah,
or at least moderately well-received stuff.
They made, you look at that Westwood Studio era, so they start really with the Legend of Corandia franchise, and then they followed that up with Dune 2. We don't talk about Lands of Lore. And then
we do talk about Lands of Lore. Lands of Lore is great. Fuck you.
There's one good Land of Lore game.
There's one good Lands of Lore game.
One,
there are also
there's a bad one.
Sequels.
And
but Lands of Lore 1 is a fantastic follow-up to Eye of the Beholder 2. It's got Patrick Stewart for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then eventually they made Command and Conquer, and fucking basically pioneered an entire genre.
Yeah, if you ignore the fact that Herzog Zwei invented the RTS, they invented the RTS when they made Dune. And
okay, Sega weirdo.
Yes.
They made IF for Infocom. I'm sorry. I'm still tripping over this list of games. Circuit's Edge is, yeah, it's just straight up, well, it's a text adventure with graphical elements. But that's like late. That's like 1990.
Mm-hmm.
That's like pretty late in the game to be making like text adventure interactive fiction stuff at that scale. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that has to do with like, people didn't switch from the Atari ST to like DOS or the Commodore 64 or Amiga to Windows as quickly as people like to think in their head. Like, oh, wow, look at this, Windows, it's so great. So people were making like weird shit like that for like the FM Towns or the PC 98 well into the later than what we would think.
Yeah, I mean they've got FM Towns and PC 98 credits through like 1995.
I mean they have Risk OS credits and like Acorn credits, Acorn computer credits. So
for
they
real sickos.
They understood almost every facet and nugget and part of the PC market. They were making stuff for those weird Japanese 16-bit computers and 32-bit personal computers. Like they had that on. They figured it out. Like they had everything.
Whoa! They made an Apple II GS game in 1993. That's quite late. Sorry, I continue to trip over this. But yeah, a lineage, a successful lineage of stuff that got eyeballs on them. And one of those eyes was basically the freaking eye of Sauron, called Electronic Arts in California. They gazed over into the Las Vegas area, as I understand it. We're like, these fellows seem quite talented. We should acquire them for a princely sum from their current landlords in Virgin, which they did for, as I think you said, $122 million or something like that, which was quite big. Yeah, that whatever velvet arrangement they came up with between the two companies lasted for about 4 or 5 years before they stopped making enough
Red
money.
Alert 2, and they made Dune 2000, and then
they made everyone's favorite game, yours and mine, Pirates: The Legend of Black Cat, for the original Xbox.
Some sort of, and then they worked on some sort of
an
MMO that flopped.
Yeah, Earth and Beyond.
They made Earth and Beyond, and then they were shuttered. And
no, they made Command and Conquer, Renegade, and then Earth and Beyond, and then they completely shuttered.
And then everyone who wanted to stay got packed into EALA and made
a large portion of them went on to form Petroglyph Games,
CNC Generals, and the Battle for Middle Earth games.
Oh,
and then eventually CNC
Star Wars Empire at War
3 and Red Alert 3.
Grey Goo.
So,
a lot of history with this team, right?
Yes. But Nox, there's a reason why we haven't been talking about it.
Yeah, it's because it is, as I think the youth say, and as Braden said, I will not credit you for this. It is the definition of mid.
Yeah.
It is like if you look in the dictionary, there you go. That's not to say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's held up particularly well. But yeah, this is... It's funny because you look around for quotes from the developers, and I'll confess to not having done a ton of research because when I started playing this game, I was confronted by an earth-shattering feeling of middery. But
it's
when you look around at...
Would you call it a midden?
A midden.
Get it? Because a midden is an old-timey word for sewer.
Like a... like a privy. Anyway,
A rubbish
the
heap.
lead developers on this game, one of whom was named Michael Booth, and the other one whose name is gone from my brain and not in these notes, which is very helpful. The stated influences that he had were Magic the Gathering, the card game, for those of you who are not infected, Mortal Kombat, the arcade game, for those of you who are not infected, and Atari's Gauntlet. Now, the Magic the Gathering I only see in a certain turn of the millennium cringe, nerd, Buffy ass, like sub Whedon-esque irreverence, I guess. The Mortal Kombat, I have no idea, except everyone wanted to like wear baggy like jeans and a trench coat, I guess, in those days. And Gauntlet, on the other hand, Gauntlet makes sense to me. I understand Gauntlet because I'm old and I'm gonna die soon.
Yeah. Let's play Gauntlet Dark Legacy, guys.
I literally played Gauntlet Dark Legacy on stream a week ago.
I know. I want to play Gauntlet Dark Legacy.
No, you don't.
Man,
Yes, I
it's
do.
a game that has like ports to the N64 and the PlayStation and the Dreamcast, and each one of those games looks horrible in a different way. But that's okay, because the original also looked horrible. Let me tell you, because I played it in arcades, and no. But Gauntlet 4 on the Genesis, now that's a fucking game.
Oh, of course, he likes the Genesis version of the game.
M2 made that game. Its soundtrack is incredible. If you think about this game, I think it is very funny that they reference Magic the Gathering and Mortal Kombat and Gauntlet without also being like, oh yeah, something that we played Diablo. Because y'all played Diablo.
I have played Diablo.
No, I'm saying these individuals at Westwood played Diablo and looked at it. Come on, lads. But there's this other part of this game that I think might have been more where their heart was, in some sense. The Gauntlet part of this notwithstanding. They made references to Quake and Unreal as influencing the multiplayer of this game. Now, here's where I'm going to make a startling, appalling, truly earth-shattering confession to our audience. And I guess, truth in advertising, right? I didn't finish this game. I know. You would hurl your words at me. You may pummel me with insults, okay? You may put me up in the stocks. However, I did go to pains to play a little bit of the multiplayer with Chris Zombie Pie.
Yes.
Who's also on this show.
I'm here.
And
I'm a person.
Chris, if I were to say that this feels like, let's say, Quake by way of Diablo in the multiplayer mode, how would you feel about that?
I would feel okay with that. Yeah, I would feel okay with that.
Because, like,
there's a slipperiness with the aiming, with the match. We'll talk about the mechanics, but like when you play this game single player mode, like aiming and shooting your magic bolts and your fire bolts is fiddly and slippery enough to where, it's just a zombie and it's slow moving. But when you're doing it in kind of like an arena, free-for-all, shooty shoot kind of like top-down version of Quake, there's something that feels so inaccurate about your shots and what your attacks and all of the stuff that it feels like hopping around and just blasting guns and hoping for the best like you're playing Quake 2.
It's...
No.
Feels like a thing that would have worked better with more people in an arena.
Yes.
Which, to their credit, the online modes of this supported either 16 or 32 people in a lobby, which is enough to, I think, make this work. With 2 people, not so much, but we're kind of not using the tool the way it was intended. I suppose it's worth praising the creators of the mod that both of us were using to really make this possible in the present epoch, Open Nox, which is available online. There are clients for it for your favorite operating system, one of the 3. They're all there, and it's great. It takes this game, it adds some support for higher resolutions than the good folks at Westwood ever intended this game to run. It doesn't do anything with the video files, which we'll talk about a little bit, but they're still in there, and it adds more or less modern networking features that you'd kind of expect. It's got a lobby browser, and there are people still running lobbies. As far as I could tell, we were maybe 2 of the only 3 or 4 people on Earth playing it at that exact moment.
That said, we did see multiple lobbies that had been in place for what felt like years. Like, it was the same lobbies over and over again that were in place and available to people. I do want to say one thing about Open Nox and why I feel it's important. While for those of you that decide to listen to this podcast and decide to buy a copy of Nox, it's important to note that the GOG version that is being sold does not run out of the box on Windows 10 or above. You have to kind of use some trickery and compatibility modes. For example, I had to drop it down, use compatibility mode to Windows 98, and then also to not run full screen. No, I had to run it in administration mode before I used Open Nox. Open Nox fixes a lot of these issues. It does not fix the ability to change the way that you control your little avatar person, but it's kind of bizarre that this is another one of those weird GOG games that if you buy it, it does not run out of the box.
I will confess, I'm running Windows 11. I did not experience the same issues getting it to just run out of the box. However, PCs are kind of weird, right? Who knows?
This
Maybe
game
I looked at it the right
also
way.
kind of starts in an interesting way. Something that people kind of forget about with like Diablo 1 is that Diablo 2 is the game where it's kind of up its own ass with its lore and its story. Diablo 1 is just like click to kill the cow level. And oh yeah, you were the bad guy all along.
Oh yeah, no, like if you look at the oral histories of Diablo 1 and 2, like everyone at Blizzard North was like, yeah, we have no idea what the fuck they were doing down there in Anaheim, but Chris Metzen had some lore books. We were too busy clicking on things.
This game is basically an isekai in hiding. So I guess that's the one first kind of improvement, is that this game does care a little bit more about trying to paint a picture about what is this world, where do you exist, who are you? And I know I've kind of ducktailed your discussion about the multiplayer, Jeff, so feel free to
No, it's fine
to do that. But it has a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of narrative and world building than most ARPGs. So instead of just being like a weird stranger who's just wandering into town and then you pick up a quest to kill rats in a sewer, you're a dude named Jack, which this kind of leads to when you play in multiplayer, you're just this dude coloring in your t-shirt and like making some sort of weird abomination person just running around in sneakers and stuff. But in the story, you're in modern America, you're watching TV with your partner, and then you get teleported into this weird world because the evil queen of the necromancers, I think Hecuba, she's trying to do something with an evil magic orb, pondering her orb, and she accidentally summons Jack. She thinks Jack is then her familiar, but then you need to be a champion of the realm of the fantasy lands. It's an isekai.
It's absolutely an isekai. The only thing that's missing is like a beach episode.
Yeah,
really.
So there's a little bit of care into, the world building here. The weird thing is, and Jeff can back me up, is when you try to play this multiplayer, so there's basically 2 different modes. There is the arena mode, and then there is a, in quotation, quest mode. And we were kind of excited to do the quest mode. We found out, however, that the quest mode is basically like an auto-generated rogue mystery dungeon, where when you click quests, you and however many partners that join you get plopped into a dungeon, and either you have to like figure out runes or deal with goblins. There's no real bearing in the story. You're not able to, and this is something that later Diablo's, like, this is the one nice thing about Diablo 3 is like, hey, let's play this part of the story together cooperatively. So it's, as someone said, in a lot of ways, Nox is ahead of the curve, but in like the most annoying way possible, because they're so close to games that tried all this shit and did it better.
But yes, it is 6 months too early And so it's an interesting middle ground because it's not loot focused. It's not at all focused around prefixes and suffixes. The environments are set. Your progression through the game is determined by which class you picked. There's Fighting Man, Wizard Man, and then the Summoner, who is kind of the archer pet class. And that determines which order you go through the areas in the game. But the areas themselves are, not randomized because they have preset progression and traps. There's a lot of traps in Nox, and that's not like a weird euphemism, you fucking internet degenerates.
Why were you looking at me when you said that?
I feel like that is maybe the biggest differentiator between this and Diablo on just a moment-to-moment gameplay, other than the part where if you want to move, you have to hold the right mouse.
Rich, let's talk about it.
No. Is there anything else we want to get into before I just complain? It did, man. This game really didn't make me feel great playing it.
So
I don't know what to say.
I mean, it employs a bit of an oblique perspective, right? And there are a number of predefined hotkeys. Reading the reviews for this game, people were really kind of enamored by the line of sight mechanic, which there's a fog of war mechanic because I think they just took their RTS fog of war mechanic. It's called True Sight, where depending on which buildings or things you're in, it blacks out portions of the screen and you can't see it. I found that really fucking annoying, so I actually turned it off.
It's cool that they got it.
It's cool that they got it, but also like Ultima Adventures did that. It's like the technical side of things, the fully pre-rendered videos were apparently really well received. The cutscenes, the game engine, all of the non-player characters that you can talk to. Like, this game reviewed well, and it
is
sold
technically
well.
Impressive. It moves pretty well.
This is a game I feel like I could have only have played when I was in college, and I didn't give a shit about what video games did to my body when I played them for like all-nighters in between going to U.S. Government 101.
I guess look, it's I've not had like wrist problems like some people I know who are my age or even younger than me, frankly. So this is the first time it's really like got me this bad. But yeah, I don't know, like just like holding down a button on a mouse and dragging it around for like 30 minutes to an hour at a go, after a while, like it was not a thing I wanted to continue doing because it was starting to get kind of shitty and bad and painful and no good. And the only, like, it could have been made instantly better by just having click to move. Like a simple binary option in the options to have it be drag or click would have solved this. And further than that, this was, I think Zeto pointed this out in our Discord community, patreon.com/deeplistens. A thing that people do, which I guess makes sense, but I didn't realize, is in playing Diablo or games that would rely on a like hold to move option, they would just bind it to a keyboard key, which makes a certain amount of sense, I suppose. The issue with that in this specific game is the mouse is being used to sort of click on objects in the world, so you kind of just need to be using a mouse, which leaves you with your left hand. And you're like, surely, well, I mean, there's the whole left side of a keyboard. What if I told you they bound, like, everything?
Yeah.
Like, everything is bound, because the way this game is set up is a very fun, extensive series of hotbar things, for lack of a better word, that take up most of the left side of a keyboard. The one key, and actually the number row at the top, was left unbound. So what I wound up doing was binding it to the one key just to kind of fiddle around. And I gotta say, it kind of worked, but then I'm just holding down a one key to move forward while I'm using a mouse to redirect myself, and it just didn't feel great. So this is, I don't know, just as a,
when
like...
I tried to play DS games on an emulator.
Right. Or, yeah, like, go back and try to play... I mean, I'd like to think I'm consistent about this to an extent, because let me tell you, playing those DS Zelda games, not great. It turns out the stubborn Miyamoto-esque insistence on a bad control scheme. Just maybe don't do that. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it just simply having a click option would have made this notably better. But as it was, I could play this game for about an hour, and I was like, nope. I've got other things I would rather do, like go get the Bengay. Or in my case, Tiger Balm. Let me tell you about Tiger Balm. Have I mentioned I'm a Tiger Balm man? If you cut open my knees, there's a thick ring you'll have to cut through first. There's just Tiger Balm encrusted on them. Tiger Balm, wonderful product. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, I did. Part of the reason I did not play a lot of this game, as I mentioned, I was not necessarily enamored with it, but not put off. But also, I don't know, I just found it kind of off-putting to play. And I don't think you would get away with having this control scheme in this day and age without having an option to rebind it somehow. And I'm not necessarily holding it against the game because I'm talking about something that came out 22 years ago. It was a different time, etc. I don't know. It's I can't deny who I am and the experience I had. So yeah, dunk on me, Braden. That's fine.
How dare you? I only played this game for like 2.5 hours beyond what I streamed a couple of years ago.
God. I played basically the.
Yes, 2020 was 2 years ago, Jeff.
I played up to basically the first act. I wanted to at least get to the first boss in this game. I wanted to get to this game's version of big goat monster or whatever. And I have an ergonomic setup. I've always been someone who likes really ultralight mice. I also am a fingertip user, so I feel like that alone. I'm not a palm person. I'm not a fingertip person. I'm a claw grip, I should say. But I can slit or switch my grip on my mouse to a fingertip. And I felt like that helped a little bit. I just thought, as Braden would say, this was just very average. Mechanically, it is a product of an era of game. It is a neat
experiment.
Yeah, and it outside of, say, this is a game from a studio that went on to make the most important foundational texts of the RTS genre around the same time. Like, they followed this game up with Red Alert 2, which to me says that maybe the priorities of Westwood at this time, this is when probably EA was making them kind of rein things in, but also kind of spread their shot.
Everything has to be a mega hit. Yeah.
Everything has to be a mega hit. And so, like, some projects panned out, some projects didn't. But I don't know. I think that other than, like, the uncomfortability of using this game, like, just, like, I sure did hit the hot button to shoot the fireball a lot, and things died.
This game makes sense in a very specific time period that is between the release of this game and the release of Diablo 2.
Yeah,
or, maybe Lord of Destruction, because I feel like one of those fun things you don't realize looking back is people were kind of lukewarm on Diablo 2 at launch. And it wasn't until around Lord of Destruction.
One thing about this game that's kind of novel is the fact that it has an interesting magic mechanic. The only problem is that of your 3 people, 2 of them can actually take advantage of magic. And of the 2 magic casters, one kind of sucks, the Conjurer, and the other, the Wizard, feels like the priority of the actual game. In terms of, like, it has this weird spell combination system where you can make traps that are kind of
neat.
Yeah, there's the spell trap system, which borrows directly from Magic the Gathering, where you can kind of lay things like landmines on the ground and have people just charge after you. Which, I guess that's the whole arena multiplayer thing. We're playing this game in the year of our Lord 2022, but there are certain parts of the Magic system that feel like they are pulled and made in a way that made more sense for a multiplayer focused arena thing rather than a single player, you're doing this on your own. And I can't help but wonder if maybe the priority was actually the multiplayer side of things, because some parts of the single player felt like, oh, you're tutorializing this specific part of this game, which I probably can take advantage of better if I were to play this game multiplayer. But I thought that there were aspects of this game that were fun.
Yes. When I did this for the dubious RPG streams, my ultimate conclusion was this is too baseline competent to be dubious. Like, it's not amazing. It's not an interesting train wreck like most of what I like to play. But it's like this, it's a well-made, like, experimental, what is it? Like a failed evolutionary branch, basically.
Yeah.
Like, very much going in this, like, way more actiony arena. Like, you have a jump button in this game. You can jump.
You do, which is very strange.
Like,
It feels very alien if you've played really any amount of Diablo.
Yes.
So like, I have to jump over this
you have
obstacle.
to jump over the traps.
Yeah.
Like an action
or the
game.
lava.
Which is why I think the Gauntlet comparison kind of rings true in my head. It's interesting.
It has ideas. I mean,
But also I don't think it necessarily holds up in any fashion other than historical curiosity. It's not bad enough to be funny.
No, it's not worth being particularly upset or mean to it. Like, I think, as noted, absolutely eclipsed months after it came out. Like, Diablo 2, the date on this I'm seeing is June 28th, 2000. So this had basically a 4-month window where it was relevant is like maybe too cruel of a word, but feels apt. Like, there was no oxygen for this thing like months after it came out.
Question from the chat. Does it do anything that you think modern types of these games could learn from, or is it just kind of one of these?
I think as Chris was saying, the magic system is interesting. Like, they tried to put a spin on it that wasn't just sort of like instant magic missile. There's a little modularity. It was apparently going to be a lot more ornate originally, I think I recall reading, because there's, to use Buddhist terminology, the magic is kind of done by mudras or certain hand movements or whatever. You're kind of
That's
playing
right.
a game based on the OA. So
fuck the OA. God, fuck that show.
a show genetically engineered to make CP want to die.
It's just fucking like, God, fucking throw your hands in the air and do some mantras.
Is that the super new agey Netflix show?
Fuck, I got through. Yeah, God,
Okay.
fuck that show.
I did it. I hit a button, but like all the magic spells are basically done by these hand incantations. It's like when you read the D&D stuff from even like 4th edition, and it says like, there's the cantrips are done by the wizard has to have his hands open to be able to like move them. Yes, and no one ever uses those, but you should.
I
It
do.
makes the game more flavorful and interesting. Right?
I force my
good.
casters to take a feat or drop their shield.
Because otherwise it's just playing a video game, right? Which 4th edition took some steps towards. I'm not making a judgment call about that, but it did. In fact, I think 4th edition can be okay in certain applications. Combat's pretty. Anyway,
If you like to hit
Well,
things real hard and see
You
a bunch
pay
of
it.
hit
Listen,
points.
we get enough patrons. Maybe we'll live stream ourselves playing D&D 4th edition. This is not a guarantee. This is not a promise.
There's a video game that uses D&D
No,
4th
there
edition's
isn't.
rule
It died at birth.
Okay.
It's a D&D game that uses 4th edition's rule set.
No, it
Here's-
doesn't. Fuck
here's
off.
here's the thing. Here's my 4th edition bit. D&D has had a classical problem, the linear warrior quadratic wizard problem, and 4th edition is ultimately a way to try to solve that problem by flattening everyone's sort of like possibility space.
Haggardale.
Just saying. I think it's an interesting solution to that problem. I don't think it's all the way successful.
But yeah, no, I
But-
mean, like, the interesting thing about this game is, like, it has a weird non-Vancian style of magic, more Diablo, but also, like, there's scrolls. Like, the Conjurer has to rely on those beast scrolls. You have to tame wild animals to have them fight for you. The wizard has to, like, heal himself, but also has the ability to teleport and become invisible, which makes certain stealth sequences far easier. The problem is that, like, I found using the warrior absolutely fucking intolerable.
Yeah, speaking of the classic linear warrior quadratic wizard problem. Playing a warrior in this game just kind of sucks. Like, it's, I don't know what to tell you. If you
don't
like,
get the good clicking, you only get the boring one.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
like
see,
if
that's
you
the...
like to move an avatar towards the, like if you like puzzle games or adventure games where the solution is use character on item, like play Nox as a warrior. Like that's what you get. It's a lot.
See, and I was thinking about, like, why do I like the Warrior in Might and Magic 6? Like, I don't normally like the sword and board characters, but then it's like, wait, no, because I can do feats and because I can do the skill checks, and you can't really do any skill checks with the Warrior. And what's worse is, like, say what you will about Diablo 1, but there are interesting DPS character classes in that game. Hellfire introduced the monk, and I still kind of like that original Diablo monk.
If we ever play, we at Off the Deep End promise you we will never play Diablo or Diablo 2. We might play Hellfire.
Oh shit, Hellfire, the Toe Plan game for the Genesis?
No, Diablo Hellfire. You know, made by some sort of small team at Sierra. People forget, but like Sierra published that game. The rapidly decomposing body of Sierra.
Sierra Online.
Yes.
Makers of good adventure games.
They also made Hellfire, a expansion pack to Diablo that Blizzard refused to acknowledge
but
for
then was
years.
Included with the GOG release of Diablo.
Yes.
Huh. So it is. I couldn't have told you what this was until you started talking about it just now, because in my head there was a monk in that game.
Yes.
But yes, apparently, as you say, Roberta Williams created the monk. That is how that worked.
But anyways, like whatever you do, don't play the warrior in Nox. If you play Nox, don't play the warrior. I feel like we're forgetting one part of this puzzle. This game has voice acting.
Yes, it does.
And Jeff realized something very quickly about
that's not
voice
fair.
acting.
Don't give me that much credit. I had to do some poking around, but I learned it all the same. Are you familiar with the hit film American Pie?
I am aware of it.
I have heard of it. It is a little before my time.
It has America's sweetheart Allison Hannigan in it, right?
There's a part where a man fucks a pie.
Yeah, it's got Eugene Levy.
Sure, I love Eugene Levy.
It probably holds up really well.
I love Schitt's Creek, and by that I mean I think Schitt's Creek is pretty good.
I really liked Eugene Levy in Best in Show.
I just watched that like 2 months ago.
Very good.
Does hold up.
I love Eugene Levy. That's not a goof. Schitt's Creek is a like a decent sitcom elevated by the quality of its cast.
Catherine O'Hara in that show, very, very funny. Glad she's still getting work too. Yeah, those two Canadians getting work on Schitt's Creek. But the connective tissue between American Pie and this game is everyone's favorite actor from hit films like Goon and American Pie, and as we all know, wrestling-related film The Rundown. Sean William Scott is the voice of Jack, your protag in this game. That's right. The man who was the Stifler, the man who was in Southland Tales, and I think at least one Final Destination movie. He is also in Nox. So, they went and got, at the time it would have been, let's call him upper B-list talent to get in the voice booth. I'm not going to call Sean William Scott an A-lister because I don't think that's fair or accurate, but that counted for something. I bet he got a check. He got his bag, as they say. So that's really weird. I don't think he kills it. I think all the voice acting in this game is fine. I think, much like the actual plot, which I guess it's worth noting, there are 3 classes, as we mentioned, and they all start in a unique area, but they all end basically the same spot, or go through, the same stages, slightly altered in order, and then the ending is different for each one of these classes.
Yes.
And it actually plays with the, I guess, isekai-esque, nature of things, because you have sort of your, I don't know if you'd call them good end, neutral end, bad end, per se. How would you characterize these endings? That's probably too simple. The Warrior's, I guess, the most smooth brain one of them, right?
Yes.
You beat evil.
Yeah.
Hooray. To being the least interesting class,
Yeah.
you get sort of the least interesting ending.
You win. You basically win.
The Conjurers is a little more
Nuanced.
Is that the one where you don't necessarily become like the evil lord at the
No,
end?
it is not Diablo 1.
Summarize the ending of these, someone, please. Don't save this segment. Seeing as we all beat this game.
So the wizards so the conjurer, wait, I kind of remember this now. So the conjurer, I'm going to look it up on Wikipedia.
There we go.
Retrieving the weirdling and the rest of the game is identical to the warrior's storyline, but the finale is different with the conjurer. Using his abilities to possess Hecuba's ogre bodyguards, Jack entraps her soul within the orb, and the ending video sees Jandor pondering how to transport him back home. So basically, you really fuck up Hecuba, but they don't know how to send you back. Okay, the wizard's route. After escaping the underworld, Jack retrieves the weirdling and travels to the land of the dead like the other routes. However, the wizard character receives a twist ending, wherein, upon being defeated, Hecuba turns into an apparently innocent and amnesiac version of herself. Jack's final words in the game suggest that he stays in the land of Nox with the redeemed Hecuba.
Sure.
Cool. I mean,
but yeah, it's
multiple
it's doing it is doing the early aughts, late 90s, quippy, irreverent.
Yeah, and it just adds to that quality of like this game feels like it was on the cutting edge at the time, but man, it's just too early for some of this. It's just a little on the early side. It's a little raw. It's undercooked, but it's not bad, right? Like it put in more effort to try and tell us. It put in more effort to try and tell a story than Diablo 1.
In a world where this is one of those games that if there was a sequel to it, it probably would have been quite good or a complete disaster.
Yeah.
When I think of hey, here's a game that I think would have benefited from a sequel, I feel like this could have benefited from a sequel, either to double down on the focus on arena combat or to make it more of a Diablo.
But alas, Westwood, as we hinted at, was allowed to exist for maybe 3 more years, and then EA closed them. Yeah. They spent all that money, and then Westwood was shut down.
They put a bullet in the back of Westwood's brain right next to the corpses of Bullfrog and Origin, and, your next BioWare.
They're going to give them the chance to make a Dragon Age game.
Yeah, sure.
They're going to be able to make a Dragon Age. It's going to be great.
Please look forward to our inevitable Anthem playthrough when they announce they're shutting down the servers.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I feel like having Anthem as our 30 subscriber game makes a little more sense in some ways, but I'm also convinced that they're going to shut that down any day. So,
look, I think we've said it on air before, but if they ever announce that servers for Anthem are going to get shut down, fuck everything. We are going to play Anthem.
We're smashing the glass. We're getting in there.
Pressing the button that says Iron Man ?
Okay, so I started a tangent 20 minutes ago, and I'm going to pick it up again to respond to the person in Twitch chat, who, thanks for being in there, by the way. Take this Mudra concept, and sort of the trap-making components of this game, and kind of blow that out a little further in a game. Let's call it Nox 2, Return of Nox, where basically the spell system becomes modular, more modular, like Morrowind modular. Right?
Okay.
I feel like this has already been done, though, in a game which I don't necessarily love, and has some things in common with this, and in fact, we were talking about it on Discord. This game kind of points, in a way, to Magicka.
Yeah.
Has some things in common with Magicka. I don't love that game. However, I can't sit here and tell you it's like poorly designed or necessarily bad. I think it's just a little fiddly with the modular spell shit. It's not a mode of play I necessarily enjoy, which is probably me tacitly admitting that I don't think I'd like Nox 2 in the way I just described it. However, the game sure sold a lot of copies, right? Like it's a more interesting idea than I think what is in here with the magic system. And again, continues to amaze me that they made a class in this game, this very sort of wizardy feeling game, whose main feature is doesn't use magic.
Doesn't have any of the cool wizard stuff.
Doesn't even have like ranged weapons.
No,
really.
you can't even use the crossbows.
Because only the summoner can use ranged weapons.
Very bizarre. Like it's
The way that you control, the way that
poo-poo.
you aim, the way that you target it, this game feels like it was optimized to do distance attacks, not up close and personal. Like, it does not control well when you do just DPS. It does not feel well. It does not. To hold, to move, and to click, nah.
That's where you get into the bad time. We do have a question from the Discord here too that we'll address. I think we're getting right about to the point where we'd rank this.
Yeah.
Jotsu asked, do you think the way they went with multiplayer was a good idea, or do you think going the Diablo route would have been better for this game? The Nox Quest is sort of trying to split the difference there in a lot of ways. I think having an arena-style Diablo-esque game is a differentiator that makes sense at the time, considering how popular network play even Diablo 1 was and how popular arena shooters were in that specific period.
Yeah.
So it makes sense why they did it then. And I think, again, if you've got the right group of people to go in on copies of this game, which range from like free to $5 or $6, I think, on GOG, and played, arena shooter Nox with each other, you could have a pretty good time. It was probably a much better time when you could have had like hundreds, if not thousands, of people all trying to do this at the same time. But as I mentioned, doing this with two people, it's kind of hard to, have specific set feelings on the multiplayer of this game based on the experience I had, because I don't think it's very indicative of the game at its best.
The worlds and the environments in this game are very large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, to kind of come back to our discussion about like actually playing this game, I got lost a lot in this game. Like, the worlds feel almost too busy. Some of the secret pathways, there's a lot of this game where it's like, you need to find a wall that's actually a hidden wall and hit it with something and break it. Like, the actual level design in this game was super annoying. Supremely annoying. Like, there's a lot of weird, like, I just got to the point where I started playing with a guide on standby and a second monitor on my second monitor. And that first tutorial clues you into this. It's like, the first thing you have to do is like, destroy this wall because it's actually a secret wall. It's like, whoa, there's like literally no sparkly, glowy aura around here. It's just, okay, let's go. But yeah, I thought that the environments were big almost to a fault, to where they felt like, even in the story, the environments felt like arenas that I would, jump around and like shoot people with my laser beams. But yeah, I don't know. It really looks cool when you cast a lightning bolt and like all of the plant life catches on fire. That was cool. It's a good looker.
It's a looker for its time. It's really, I'm embarrassed to even ask this, but I'll show some ass. Can you scroll in and out in this game? It's something I don't recall even trying to do.
I don't think you can.
I will say you should absolutely use that Open Nox client. It gets you around a couple of the sort of late 90s PC game, questionable, fun, technological bumps. It will absolutely work on whatever computer you're running. However, if you run this game at a high enough resolution, clicking on objects and looking at things on screen can be kind of a pain in the ass, because, as we said, the maps are kind of big, and when you are pulled out far enough at a high enough resolution, world objects can be kind of small. So
yeah, and
that isn't just me being old and having bad vision. That's, I think, just a gripe. So worth considering. Maybe makes more sense to run this at, OG 6x800 or something, and have a nice big fat character
1024
in the
by
middle.
768.
Yeah, pick your 3x4 or your 5x4 or whatever integer scaled resolution that you like. Doesn't have widescreen support, by the way, or ultra wide. Actually, I guess it might have been. Anyway, yeah, Nox. It's fine.
Fine.
It's fine. It's certainly not bad. I don't hate it.
It's a video game that we played.
I think the overall the plot was a little too very easy to not give a shit about. I'll say that. I'm not going to sit here and say it's like terrible, badly written garbo. It's of its time. It stays out of the way, but it's very not like sink your teeth into. So when you don't have that in a sort of RPG game, for me, it's kind of like, okay, so like what's the mechanical meat of this? What's it like to play? And the answer is you get an RSI while you play Diablo. And one of the classes is actually just terrible. So
A ringing endorsement from Off the Deep End.
but you could have worse times. Just play as one of the damn magic classes.
What if
Yeah,
we ranked
magic.
this?
Magic is good in this game.
What if we ranked it? What if we put it on the big damn list, which is continuing to get bigger and bigger? As you know, you can
Tell
see
me
this
about
list
this
at
big list.
It's bit.ly/OTDE rank. That's what it is, as opposed to our Final Fantasy list, which is Deep Final. That is bit.ly/Deep Final. Look at that. OTDE rank, the bit.ly address that we have squatted, points to a Google list, which has at the top of it Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven, followed by Suikoden the First and Xenosaga the First. At the very bottom of this list, we have Unlimited Saga, which, as we've discussed, is not very good. Okay, so...
Line of mediocrity. Let's start there.
Yeah, let's go slightly down from the midpoint, I guess.
Okay.
I'm looking at Tales of Games Studios presents Chef Boyardee's Sparkly Shut Up and Jam Gaiden Chapter 1 of the Hoop Sparkly Saga.
Uh-huh.
A game that is real, and that's its legal name. The only legal thing about that product. How do we feel about this relative to Barkley Gaiden?
I think this is... Oh, man, but I finished Barkley Shut Up and Jam.
Yeah, I
didn't-
know. I started saying it aloud, and I was like, fuck.
I feel like
This is too cruel.
I hate this. This is awful. This is a terrible feeling. Even if I finished Barkley Shut Up and Jam and I did not finish Nox
Nox never punches
below its weight. Nox does not
below
punch
its waist. It also doesn't punch down the way Barkley Gaiden occasionally does in some like surprisingly ugly ways, right?
Yes.
But
man, that
Barkley
game's
Shut Up and
probably
Jam,
better.
when it's good, it's really good. Like the highs of Barkley, it's like that. It's like what Jeff said. When Sweet Georgia Brown starts playing when you fight Michael Jordan, that alone is a higher high than any part of Nox.
When that dinosaur sprite shows up as the final boss, that is funnier than every single joke in Nox combined.
The part where you're like constructing a poem in the furry town, and the correct answer is to ignore the person who thinks they're a poet.
The save point making you admit that Arc the Lad 2 is better than Tony Hawk Pro Skater in order to save the game because it's a horrible weeaboo. Very, very funny for all time. However, this feels wrong.
This feels like a crime. I'm going to say that Nox is better than
Nox
Barkley.
is better. Nox is better than Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden.
Yeah, I can't. Jeff, I can't in good conscience.
I feel like... Okay, yeah, all right, let's go nuclear. Westwood made better RPGs than this.
Yes.
Does that change your mind?
No.
Okay. All right. Then it goes above Tales of Games, etc. Select puts says Zelda 2 is the next thing on the list. How we feel about that comparison? Here's my statement I'll say about that. I think this game is way less malicious than Zelda 2.
Here's the funny thing. I think I'm going to write a blog about Zelda 2. I ended up playing the Switch version of Zelda 2 that Braden recommended. I actually ended up finishing the game.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, I feel like I've changed my stance, my aggressive, like, this is bad. That said, we are an RPG reviewing podcast, I would feel bad about a game that is totally fine being ranked below a game where the RPG part of the game is the worst part.
Yeah, that is absolutely where I fall on that as well. Yeah, Zelda 2, pretty good action game with a bad RPG kind of holding it back. So, above Zelda 2, that puts us at Ys 3, Wanderers from Ys. The bad Ys game, which is kind of like Zelda 2 in a lot of ways, actually.
Yeah, except without hit stun.
Yeah, this isn't better than a lot of Nihon Falcom developed RPGs, but it's probably better than the original Ys 3.
This might be the one Falcom game that it's better than.
Yeah, that's fair. I can live with that. Soma Bringer, a Diablo-esque game by Monolith Soft.
This game's better than Soma Bringer.
Okay, I agree.
I agree as well.
Bahamut Lagoon.
Oh man.
You know what? Maybe I'll put the line here.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you two feel?
Why would you say Bahamut Lagoon is better than this game?
Bahamut Lagoon is at least like a weird, as far as weird experimental late model games that have been done better by other games in the same genre. I feel like Bahamut Lagoon is a better one of those than Nox.
I'm not going to, it's on record how much I played of Bahamut Lagoon, which is not a whole heck of a lot, but that game at least had a plot and characters that are more interesting than a Buffy bottle episode, basically. In addition to having, late model SNES stuff.
I'm just going to present this just to play devil's advocate, but I don't want to underscore how much more Nox is more mechanically functional than Bahamut Lagoon.
Okay, that is fair. Nox works.
Nox is responsive. You say that. That is the thing that drove me nuts about Bahamut Lagoon, is it's kind of like, please go do this, dragon.
Okay, would we be willing to say Nox has pretty good game juice? Is that what we're saying?
In the way that these games all do, I think that's the reason Diablo works. Right?
It is responsive, and it's a very actiony. Like, compare it to Diablo 1, I guess would be the straight comparison there. And Diablo 1, you play it now, and you definitely can see how it was originally turn-based, and it is still turn-based behind the screen.
Them turns be fast, though. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to rank Nox above or below Bahamut Lagoon?
I could see it above.
Yeah.
I think it's very funny that this game was originally going to be around Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, and we're approaching the top 10 here. Point that out.
It's not better than Hybrid Heaven.
I mean, he said it for me, so there you go.
You can't suplex a weird mutant.
You know what? Yeah, I think that's the thing. I was the most negative about Hybrid Heaven just because I just didn't enjoy playing it, but Hybrid Heaven has more pizzazz.
Hybrid Heaven has voice acting in an N64 game.
Very, very good voice acting. The finest Muppets they could find. So, okay, once again, my placement of Hybrid Heaven comes into play, which is very...
Hybrid Heaven is the cornerstone of this entire podcast.
See, Hybrid Heaven is the key. See, he's... Jar Jar Binks, he's the key to everything.
Yes.
Laugh at my George... Okay, that's where it's going to go then. It's going to go between Bahamut Lagoon and Hybrid Heaven is going to be the new number 14 on this list. Congratulations, Nox. Congratulations, Westwood. I've heard that Command & Conquer remaster is pretty good.
It is. Those games are old. That's the thing I'll say. The actual tactical considerations of original Command & Conquer and original Red Alert are mostly just like What if you built a lot of tanks and then right-clicked the enemy?
Yeah, but even at their worst, the one thing you can say about those Command and Conquer games is they made RTS games incredibly accessible
They
and
had
playable.
personality.
Charm.
They
Yeah,
had
dude. Those
real
live
human
action
actors in
those
front of
FMV cutscenes.
bad green screen.
And
Remember how Red Alert 2 has fucking Udo Kier and Ray Wise and I forgot who else was in Red Alert 2. Has Ray Wise though?
You can't go wrong.
He was
yeah,
the
Command and
president.
Conquer, man. It's
Command
a
and
good
Conquer,
series.
a good series, not an RPG.
No.
No.
You know what are RPGs? The rest of the games we're going to pick from. By the way, thank you to Jotsu for selecting Nox, and thank you for contributing to the Patreon. And speaking of patrons, we're going to pull from the patron list once again. I got a list. This list has, if I can do math good, quick, it's got 12 things on it still, which is cool. If you're interested and you're not already in the Patreon, do that. Let us know. Join that Discord or email us or somehow. You can also get a name of a game in the slush pile, and we'll talk about it. We're going to talk about one that we're going to draw right now, because I'm going to hit a random coin flip. Are you ready?
Blip, 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 blip.
And the coin flip says, by coin flip I mean random number generator, should be noted. We are going to be looking at Arcanum
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
of Steamworks.
All right, this is
and
where
Atlas
we
Obscura.
have to ask Braden, and this is to our audience. How does one play Arcanum without it immediately catching on fire?
I mean, like every game that Troika made, there is an extensive fan patch that will fix everything you want.
And it comes with the GOG version.
It does not. Vampire the Masquerade does.
It's just bundled right in with the GOG version.
But
Super easy.
I will send you the link.
Arcanum is a game. This might be the first one of these fan ones where it's I know I invoked it
I don't
for
think-
Dragoon,
I
but
don't
this
think
might
I've
be
ever
one that takes
actually
some time.
I don't think I've ever
This
actually
might be a
finished Arcanum.
multi-episode game.
Yeah, I've never actually finished Arcanum.
No one's finished Arcanum.
Is that the fault of the developer? Is it too busted and broken?
We'll talk about it if we do multiple episodes. I usually burn out at a very specific part of Arcanum every single time.
I will always make a character and then get analysis paralysis a few hours in and be like, what if I made a different character? So, Jeff, look forward to that.
I love getting to know you at your worst.
A baptism of fire. Welcome
That-
to peak CRPG, Jeff Rude.
It's Trek
You
time,
thought Fallout
baby.
and Fallout 2 were too easy.
Wake up, because time
Wake up. Time to die.
time for a big boy RPG. Time for Troika. It's Troika time. We were always going to get here. You know, this was.
Yeah.
I think even if no one had nominated these games, there was a good chance we were just going to do a big Troika blowout just voluntarily. So,
all three of Troika's games are fascinating.
and this is the first one, right?
Yes.
This
Tim
predates-
Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky left Black Isle after Fallout 1 to make this. So this was a almost 4 years in development. It's
Dang.
an ambitious
thing.
game. It is all ambition.
Yeah, it's Troika. One of you needs to actually take notes about Troika because their history is fucking wild.
I'll try to make some notes. That's what hosts are supposed to do. And
I seem to
speaking of
recall
my-
this was like one of the few games that sold okay. This was not
Yes.
the one that bankrupted them.
Well, we'll get into it.
Okay.
Microsoft's Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura.
Wait, I forget. Is it this one or was it Temple of Elemental Evil that got into controversy for homosexuality?
I think it's Temple of Elemental Evil.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, fan patch.
Fan
Van
patch.
Patrino.
We're going to wrap this up. This episode's over. Thanks for tuning in to Off the Deep End as we've discussed Nox. Look forward to our discussions of Arcanum in a couple weeks. As mentioned, questions about Arcanum or Nox or really any of the various signs of moral decrepitude displayed here that you'd like to inquire about or complain about, they can go to inquiries at
Ask me
deep.lol.
about anime.
Ask him. I want to emphasize
Ask Braden
this.
about VTubers.
Ask
me
both
about
of them.
VTuber.
Ask them about Filth. Ask me about the Genesis 2 Mini I'm going to have in the mail.
Ask Jeff about Genesis and Namco and weird Nordlander customs.
What do
Pagan
people ask
customs.
me about? What about me?
I mean,
chess.
Adventure games, chess.
The worst possible food opinions.
Oh yeah, ask me about my Taco Bell order.
No, thank you.
Also, if you would like to help keep this show on the air, as well as the main Deep Listens outfit, also on the air, in the sky, pick your metaphor. Patreon.com/deeplistens. It's a really cool place to send your money. You can send it in dollar denominations. Let me tell you about the $2 denomination. I think it's really cool. I like that it's still a prime number while also being fairly small. But it's also 100% more than 1%. 2 is a cool number. Just going to put that in the universe. Hey, if you do that and you aren't already subscribed, you get a game put on our list that we will draw from after we finish Arcanum. It also gets you in our Discord, where we are hanging out constantly. It's a cool place you can also go. Special shout out to the artist known as SuperSex420 for providing the podcast theme music Halfway. It's another 8 tracks by SuperSex420, available on Bandcamp.com. See you next time, and remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game, particularly these CRPGs from 20 years ago, because there's not really any network connectivity, except for it knocks on multiplayer, but no one's playing it anymore. Bye!
Bye.
This episode of Off the Deep End was recorded and edited on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Dishqualiapsh or Nisqually people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since times immemorial.